Tony Cashin was deeply depressed and paranoid for 5 years. He would hear imaginary voices and believe people were trying to harm him, all symptoms of schizophrenia.
And I could hear the equivalent of about 3 or 4 TVs going all on the one station, all on different stations, and all the voices, I could hear all the people talking, all the people were after me.
So severe was his paranoia that he believed his parents were trying to poison him.
This was his paranoia, of course, that this would happen, and it made me feel bad, but I had to understand that this was part of the illness.
None of the conventional drugs had any effect on his condition. His last hope was a drug called clozapine, which was trialled in Australia last year.
Oh, it was a feeling I couldn't describe. I just felt that hyped up and happy. And
it certainly has been a godsend.
Tony spent years avoiding people, rarely leaving his home. That changed almost as soon as he started on the new medication.
that I could actually go and sit with people in a picture theatre.
Clozapine isn't a new drug. It was first used in the 1960s but was withdrawn from sale after side effects led to a spate of unexpected deaths. The drug was destroying some patients' white blood cells, making them susceptible to infection.
The drug was pulled from the market in many countries, and it's only been in recent times that the drug's been reintroduced with some very intense monitoring of the blood picture.
Tony says many people don't understand what it's like to have schizophrenia.
You say to people, oh, he's a schizophrenic, or he's got mentally ill, or he's got problems like that. Everyone seems to be frightened of you. When the way I look at it as it is, rather than people being frightened of me, I'm so frightened of them.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Since the dawn of time, we've been fascinated with the skies above.
This will be the most frightening discovery of all time.
Hollywood has merged fact with fiction.
Welcome to Altair 4, gentlemen.
But for many stargazers, the galaxies are an endless source of wonder.
There are probably 100,000 million stars. But the really astonishing thing is there are probably 100,000 million galaxies like our own, each containing that number of stars.
One of the world's leading astrophotographers, Dr. David Malan, is not only a modern-day explorer, but a scientific artist portraying an astronomical world of colour.
That's a fairly newish kind of idea. Telescope, if you look at the stars at night, there doesn't seem to be much colour at all. But by using photographic techniques, this colour and it can be sprayed across the pages of a book in a way that people find attractive.
With the help of the powerful Anglo-Australian telescope, Dr. Malan's images have gained international recognition. He's just launched his new book, A View of the Universe.
The more distant the objects you look at, the further back in time you're looking at. The universe is about 15,000 million years old. And with our most powerful telescopes, we can look back to perhaps when the universe was 10% of its present age, maybe 12,000 billion years ago. So in that sense, you're looking back in time as well as in space.
To the naked eye, things don't look too bad on the Williams River, but studies show the river, which supplies 35% of the Newcastle region's drinking water, is in crook shape.
The nutrient levels in the river are higher than the classification that they should be for drinking water, and in some cases they get up to almost twice the level of nutrients in the river.
While the Water Corporation treats the water before we drink it, a draft strategy on the Williams Valley released today recommends we treat the problems before the water gets to Grahamstown Dam. 3 years in the making, it highlights everyone in the valley is guilty of damaging the region's ecosystem, be it through farming, building houses or roads, pumping sewage into the river.
There is a need for every level of society, that's state government agencies, the local government and landholders, townspeople, people who come into the catchment for recreation. They all have to take closer regard of what they're doing.
It's not all doom and gloom. The system can be revived. The strategy has recommended 100 ways to improve water quality, including introducing artificial wetlands to reduce nutrient loads and upgrading the Clarenstown sewerage system. Copies of the strategy are available through the Hunter Catchment Management Trust in Maitland. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
At home with his family today, Udo Fries reflected on the events of November 13 last year. He attended a Christmas party on the South Stane restaurant and ended up in the cells at Newcastle Police Station.
We were just acting as a normal group of people would act on a showboat at a Christmas party. It was nothing out of the ordinary.
Mr Fries was arrested by Superintendent Ian Cleary, Newcastle's second highest ranked officer, who'd attended the South Stane after his daughter Jane, a waitress on the boat, had allegedly had a problem with another patron. Mr Fries says he had an exchange between two men.
The only thing I could think that I did at the day was to ask someone's identity, as he was pursuing one of my friends.
Udo Fries was arrested and charged with refusing to leave a licensed premises. The charge was later dropped. Superintendent Cleary refused to comment today. His Superior Chief Superintendent Heinz Moller also had no comment, saying the matter is the subject of an internal investigation. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The field had been saturated with overnight rain and it didn't let up all day. Carnival organisers decided to carry on only because so many people had travelled from Tamworth and the North Coast to compete. While it slowed many of the track times, it wasn't believed responsible for this fall in the final of the under-9 girls' hurdles. Feeling the adrenaline surge, the young lady got to her feet and still managed to finish the race. In the final of the under-15 long jump, Muswellbrook's David Drain attracted plenty of attention with his performance, and although he finished third, he will still make it to the state championships along with jumpers from East Maitland and Waratah. The high jump was often interrupted due to rain, and some coaches claimed it threw their athletes out of rhythm. With the poor weather predicted to continue tomorrow, organisers expect even slower track times. However, they say the ordinary-looking times will give them the element of surprise at the state championships next month.
Mahogany a length to Pride of Rancho, who's trying to get to him. Mahogany ridden for dear life, still in front. He's hanging on. Mahogany's just won from Pride of Rancho.
The favourite winning there and paying $1.80 and $1.20. But what a handsome pay for second place. Pride of Rancho, $13. Heading north and the weather turns sour and the track heavy for the Kindergarten Stakes at Warwick Farm.
Coming after it, Hot Aussie down the outside. He picked it up pretty quickly. They're all over the shop. Hot Aussie's in front. Always Cheers hanging on to second. Sabab, and here comes Belladan and Sparkling Kiwi. But Hot Aussie's
5, 9 and 6. Hot Aussie paid $5.30 and $2.10. The trifecta, $347 even. And don't forget Gary Harley's tip for the Newcastle Trots tonight. Race 2, number 1.
It's not the easiest of tasks, keeping a room full of junior high school students occupied, but the National Science and Technology Centre believes it's come close to the mark.
There's a couple of guys back there trying to work out how to measure 7 minutes with 2 egg timers, and one of them goes for 3 minutes and one goes for 5 minutes. And 3 plus 5 is 8, so it's a bit harder than running them back to back.
Travelling the country, the Questacon Maths Centre has arrived at Newcastle's Regional Museum. Lending a helping hand are volunteer mathematicians.
It's really getting them to try and think of strategies for solving problems, and that's a big part of what teachers are doing in school. And this way they're doing it with their hands as well as their minds. So it's a bit more fun, it's a lot more noisy, and it's a bit more exciting as well.
It's been more problem solving than maths really, although problem solving is part of maths.
It was a routine operation, the removal of 6-year-old Tani Jones's tonsils and adenoids at Lingard Private Hospital. 34 hours later, she was dead. Investigating officer Sergeant Chris Surplus told the coroner's inquest Tani's operation had apparently proceeded uneventfully and her post-operative condition was stable. A nurse, Victoria Bampton, told the court Tani had been vomiting throughout the evening, but she was unable to reach the anaesthetist. Later, Tani's mother, who was with her daughter, was woken by Tani having a fit. The mother of another child in the ward who ran to get assistance said Tani was sitting up in the bed convulsing. Her arms and head were moving. Dr. Adrian Russell was contacted. Nurse Judith Gregory says she told him that according to the mother, the child had had a fit, which the staff hadn't witnessed. The doctor allegedly replied, "I doubt that very much." After administering medication, he left the hospital. Tani then became incontinent, wetting the bed and losing control of her bowels. Nurse Gregory didn't notify the doctor. At 5:30 in the morning, Nurse Gregory said Tani again started to fit, which progressively got worse and she never came out of it. She was arching her back, eyes rolled back, clenched mouth. Dr. Russell attended again. Despite treatment, she failed to respond. Tani Jones was then moved to the intensive care unit at Lingard Hospital. Later that day, she was transferred to the John Hunter Hospital, where she died. The inquest will continue tomorrow. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Dudley Beach Road runs through Glenrock State Recreation Area, and for years beachgoers have been pushing for the steep road to be sealed. The National Parks and Wildlife Service has finally taken action, and the work is expected to take just 5 days. Today, graders, rollers and water trucks were used to flatten out the surface ready for tarring to begin tomorrow. The road will be closed until the weekend, when drivers will be able to go to Dudley Beach safe in the knowledge that they won't be wiped out by potholes or rocks anymore. When more money is available, the National Parks and Wildlife Service hopes to seal the car park at the bottom of the road. Jason Neuenhoff, NBN News.
Break it all apart.
Voila. Any kid would think of this.
It was back in the pool for the Newcastle contingent of swimmers which travelled to Sydney to compete in the state titles last week. On Friday, 16-year-old Amanda Hector swam the race of her life, blitzing a field which boasted world-ranked swimmers Hayley Lewis, Petra Thomas and Angela Kennedy to win the 200 metres butterfly. In so doing, Amanda swam a personal best time of 2 minutes 14 seconds.
All the girls that had beaten her previously, and she got up and beat them convincingly. She swam over the top of them.
Also putting in an impressive performance was Renee Connolly. Her 5th place in the 200 metres backstroke could easily have been a win.
First did a 2:16 in the 200 back, and 6th place did a 2:17. So it was a second between first and 7th.
Both girls are now swimming 120 kilometres a week in training for the Australian titles next month. The pair hopes to maintain the recent good form, as the Nationals will also serve as selection trials for the Commonwealth Games team. Catherine Lamond, NBN News. Rachel Elliott is in the unusual predicament of having been named in an Australian junior wildwater canoeing team, but can't go. Although physically capable, Rachel's disability is her age. The 13-year-old is too young. The team's qualifying age group is 14 to 18.
It was a bit of a disappointment because I was looking forward to going over with my brother.
Rachel's brother Craig, aged 15, also made the Australian junior team. He leaves for New Zealand next month. The Lochinvar lass has put the age technicality behind her and is currently turning her hand to stillwater kayaking. Last weekend, the Year 8 student clinched 2 gold medals in the under-14 sprints events at the State Stillwater Championships. Now she's anxiously awaiting the announcement of the junior New South Wales team to go to the national titles next month. Closely guiding Craig and Rachel's progress is father Ron, himself a former Australian junior wildwater kayaking champion. Ron says Craig is leading towards wildwater kayaking. Rachel is yet to decide. But be it still or wildwater events, ultimately Rachel knows where she's going.
The Olympics.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah.
With the mangled wreck of the Holden station wagon back at Crewe Police Station, Constable Colin McCarthy was out at the scene today, piecing together the events of last night's tragic accident. Around 6 p.m, Wollongong couple Benjamin Tidswell, wife Vera and his sister and brother-in-law Mary and Eric Granger were travelling south along the Pacific Highway 5 kilometres north of Crewe, attempting to overtake a merging truck.
Upon accelerating, he then struck a patch of blue metal in the middle of the roadway, and this resulted in the vehicle going out of control.
The car then skidded onto the wrong side of the road, down a 2-metre culvert and into a tree, the impact throwing 73-year-old Mary Granger out of the rear passenger seat window.
She was then on the ground when the vehicle bounced off the tree and passed over the top of her, causing her fatal injuries.
Was she wearing a seatbelt?
At this stage it would appear not, but we're investigating that side of it.
The Wollongong couple and Mrs Granger's 66-year-old husband were taken to John Hunter Hospital suffering serious back, arm and head injuries. Tonight, 65-year-old Vera Tidswell remains in intensive care. The dead woman and her husband had been touring around Australia for the past 6 months visiting relatives. The couple were scheduled to fly back to England on Monday. Although the cause of the accident will be determined by the coroner, Constable McCarthy considers the condition of the road a major contributing factor to the incident.
I think that the road conditions have got a little bit to do with the accident, so far as the loose gravel and the excess loose gravel that was on the road surface.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News. To mark the beginning of the academic year at Newcastle University, a ceremony with academic staff in full regalia was held in the Great Hall. Vice-Chancellor Raoul Mortley welcomed some of the 15,000 students enrolled this year.
But also to greatly increase our emphasis on teaching and on employment links for the students when they graduate.
Severe cuts by Japanese steel mills to the price of coking coal rocked the Australian mining industry. Along with the loss of millions of export dollars, the Miners' Union predicts job losses and mine closures.
The reason we're going to Canberra is for our survival.
Northern District Miners' Union President Mick Watson says this situation is more critical than the 1992 survival rally in Canberra, which helped win relocation assistance for displaced miners. The union wants the federal government to step in to stop companies selling coal too cheaply and will rally outside Parliament House calling for intervention into price settlements. Resource Minister David Beddle oversaw the coking coal contracts but recognised a downturn in the Japanese steel industry forced prices down. Contracts for more profitable steaming coal, the lifeblood of Hunter mines, are about to be settled.
Seeing the negotiations for steaming coal are still going on, that there shouldn't be any, he should be issuing orders that no one should settle, and there should be just at least a flow on. We've been into restructuring since '88, and we've had price reductions for the last 4 or 5 years. This one has been absolutely devastating, and unless we have some sort of tripartite position with the unions, the government, and the operators, we're going to be devastated.
Rescuers rushed to the intersection of Derby Street and Parkway Avenue where two cars had collided just before 8. The impact forced one of the vehicles over the curb into within metres of a house. The 70-year-old driver suffered a fractured pelvis and legs and was trapped in the wreck. He was taken to the John Hunter Hospital where he's reported to be in a stable condition. The other driver refused hospital treatment. An 80-year-old Warners Bay woman seriously injured in a crash at Tomago Lake yesterday remains in a stable condition in the intensive care unit of the John Hunter Hospital. She was flown in by the rescue helicopter before a mechanical problem forced it to be grounded. Engineers have spent much of today preparing the machine for a replacement part for the main rotor.
Mystery and life need to walk together.
Newcastle turned on a wet welcome for the delegates, but it was the indoor facilities that were important. The 3 wetlands representatives inspected the Workers' Club, which could accommodate the 9-day conference with its 1,000 delegates from all parts of the world. But it's the city's wetlands at Kooragang Island and Shortland that could give Newcastle an edge on Perth, Adelaide and Brisbane.
They want to be close to wetland areas where they can compare notes, where they can discuss management issues, and that's a very great strength that Newcastle has to offer.
The Secretary-General says Newcastle also has the necessary accommodation and conference facilities, but will give no hints on the city's likely success.
I think it's probably premature for me to say anything. Let me just simply say that I'm extremely impressed and pleased with what Newcastle has to offer.
2 days of lobbying has proven Newcastle is ideally situated for the convention, but Council refuses to get optimistic about its chances. Newcastle believes it has the best bid, but fears that may not be enough to win the rights to stage the conference.
Well, I think it's really the political pull of the capital cities. They know a lot of contacts, and if they want it, we'd have a difficulty overcoming it.
The delegates can only recommend a city to the federal government, with the Environment Minister having the final say on the convention venue. Delegates will inspect Brisbane before giving their choice to Canberra. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The wind didn't make its presence felt all morning, and then right on cue it belted in at around 20 knots for the race start. Park Road Shear easily won Saturday's race, and it didn't take long for them to grab the initiative and move into the lead on Sunday. The Belmont crew worked hard to create a decent time buffer between themselves and the rest of the field, however they were challenged. Nokia at one stage was side by side for the lead. Rhoda Shear later lodged a protest over some of Nokia's tactics. Rather than face a hearing, the Nokia crew withdrew. In the haste to get a piece of the action, the crew of Noakes rigging forgot some of the basics and nearly ended up having a swim. Rhoda Shear is now firming as favourite for the series final on Sydney Harbour in 3 weeks' time. From wind power to paddle power, and some of the country's best sprint kayak paddlers are also training on Lake Macquarie in preparation for their national championships. Kahaiba's Matt Chalmers is rated a good medal chance at the moment. He's balancing kayak training and competing in the Nutrigrain Surf Series. Shane Suska from Caves Beach is another medal prospect, along with Kahaiba's Peter Scott. The pair recently won medals at the state titles, and instead of tapering off their training, have started to increase it to 6 days a week.
Now we're into the really hard lactic type work where they have to build up the lactic acid in their muscles and try and get to spill that as quickly as they can, especially with the Australian only 2 weeks away.
Keen to get a fisheye view of their style, cameraman Ian Montgomery went for a swim, and luckily for Ian, he found out firsthand that these athletes have no trouble keeping a straight line. It's not exactly a sight that excites race club officials the day before the start of a big race carnival. For months the track has been in desperate need of a good all-over soaking. The timing of the rain, though, isn't the best commercially.
At this stage we've had just under 25 millimetres of rain. Some areas in Newcastle had a lot more, so there's some consolation in that. And Broadmeadow, of course, is famous for its wet weather drying capability, so we're still keeping our fingers crossed that it won't be too bad.
While punters will stay nice and dry tomorrow, retired jockey Ron Quinton, now a Sydney-based trainer, says the rain may actually spook some horses.
The weather's everything, and particularly with the 2-year-olds, because I don't think it probably hasn't rained since some of them were born, probably.
At today's Beaufort Club lunch, tipster Gary Harley announced the meeting will go ahead. The only thing that may stop a race is if the jockeys complain about torrential rain.
Providing they can see all right, no problem at all on wet tracks. They're real professionals and they've got big hearts.
Leading Newcastle trainer Max Lees has 2 runners in the Classic. Last week he was confident they would perform well if the track was dry. Today he was much more cautious. Gary Harley hasn't wavered in his selections, recommending Polyak, Dapper Magic and Zanaletti.
Mick Stone's no-nonsense refereeing style was forgotten today as he gave Rotary Club members a few laughs to help raise cash for the Crippled Children's Association. And after 10 years in the top grade, he has no shortage of material to work with.
He brought him halfway around, asked him where he was. He got the ground wrong, asked him the score, he got the score wrong, and he didn't know who he was playing. And the Zambuck looked up at me and said, "Oh, he's all right, he can go on."
He retired in 1989, but still has an active role in the game as New South Wales coordinator of refereeing. He's seen many changes in the game, but says some things always stay the same.
I guess criticism from all quarters, whether it be from club officials or from the media, or generally from supporters.
This painting, entitled Envy 2, has won the top prize in the competition and will be kept by the sponsor, Newcastle City Council. Judge and art lecturer Christine Ross gave it the nod.
It challenges the emotions. It says lots of interesting things about paint itself, the surface.
First prize in the print section went to this work by Vera Zulumovsky. The best sculpture, Graham Lang's Never the Twain, a statement about humanity and the environment. The work most reflecting Newcastle was Mary Beeston's Honeysuckle Phoenix 1. The best drawing, Brian Roberts' Fastest Girl on the Beach, Nobbies.